Welcome to Bat Therapy, exploring your favorite comic book characters through the lens of clinical psychology. Be a fly on the wall or a bat in the cave, listening in on a friendship built out of a love for talking Batman, comics, and the everyday struggle to achieve mental health and happiness. We're your hosts, clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown and comic enthusiast and nerd aficionado Keaton Hopkins. This podcast is about providing education and understanding, and it's not a replacement for mental health treatment or support. If you're needing help, go to bat-therapy.com for resources.
All right, today we are doing Batman Begins.
Yes, Hans Zimmer did a great job with the music.
Of course he did. I mean, it's Hans Zimmer.
Right, the man can do no wrong if you ask me. I couldn't figure out when I got infatuated with him. I'm pretty sure it was The Lion King. Because, yeah, I remember just listening. I think that the Lion King movie score might be what really got me honed in and infatuated with movie scores. Because up until that point, the only movie score I cared about was 89 Batman. And then the Lion King's movie score, I was like, this movie music matters. It's really good. Now, so first things first, let me just say, so I've been very, 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 very infatuated with Robert Pattinson Batman, Matt Reeves Batman. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, go listen to it and make sure you see that movie. It's so good.
It's long. We get it's long. They should have made it 2.5 hours. I'm not going to disagree with that. And it's great.
I don't know what you would have cut out of it, though.
Honestly, you could have cut out a lot of Penguin, in my opinion.
I guess. But that's not who we're talking.
I'm just pause it, pee break, come back. It's great.
Right. Okay, fine. Watch it in chapters. But okay, so this is what's fun. Before we get on Batman Begins, I do believe that it's funny that when someone sees that a movie is 3 hours long, they're like, nope, I can't do it. But you can binge watch an entire TV show in one day, and
but like,
it's fine.
I think like you said, chapters make a difference. Like I get it, because everybody was like, Snyder Cut, yes. So right. Yeah, we we're hypocrites. What do you want from us?
Snyder Cut was what, 4 hours long?
I don't remember how long it was.
I think it was like 4 hours.
But he actually put like chapters for different things. Anyway.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. All right.
We're off to a great start.
Yeah, absolutely. I suffer from ADHD. I'm pretty sure everyone out there has picked up on that by now.
And I have no excuse.
Right. You're the doc. Okay, so I had become infatuated with Matt Reeves' Batman, but for this episode, I went back and I watched Batman Begins. And it brought back all the appreciation I had for it back when it came out. Because when Batman Begins came out, the only Batman movies that we had were the Tim Burton ones and then the Joel Schumacher campy ones. And then, of course, like 20 or 30 years before that, we had the Adam West one. And those were the Batman movies that we had. And I'm pretty sure I'm forgetting one that was like in black and white and super obscure. And apologies to all the super Batman historians out there. But yeah, so I was super excited about that. I was also really excited because they had never done a live action Scarecrow. The canceled there was a canceled Schumacher Batman, the third one that was coming out. I believe it was going to be called Batman Victory, and the main villains in it were going to be Man-Bat and Scarecrow. But
that would have been cool.
Right, but after Ice to See You and all that, there's
and Nipple Batman and all that.
Right,
yeah.
Right. After the Bat Nipples, and yeah, they kind of just put that away for a while. So Batman Begins comes out, and it was just a very exciting time. I'll never forget going to the midnight show for that, because I was already by then a huge Batman fan. And so when it came out, I was just, oh man, this Batmobile, I think it's a tank. What is happening right now? Michael Caine's in it. Wow.
Michael Caine is so good.
Right. Like he's such a good Alfred in
He's so
this
good.
in this movie. And I'm not gonna lie, up until this movie, I wasn't extremely familiar with Christian Bale. I wasn't very familiar with him at all. It was just like, oh,
Mm,
American Psycho.
yep.
I guess he
He
could
did
be
he did some stuff
Batman.
when he was a kid too that
Right.
I'd seen him in, but yeah.
Newsies. He's in
Yeah.
Newsies.
Yeah. How he was, wasn't he?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
See? Yeah, he was one of those before Batman where you're like, "Oh, yeah, that was him."
Everyone's with Disney
And
first.
now he's Batman.
Right. That was something they did different in this movie too. So yeah, and they did some things that I was not expecting in this movie. So it opens up, young Bruce is running, he falls into a Batcave, and he's
Mhm.
absolutely terrified. His dad rescues him, and this is also something that they hadn't shown before, but they also really focused in on just how perfect Thomas and Martha Wayne are. Like Thomas Wayne is just the best dad.
He is like a very wholesome dad in the movie.
Right. He's such a good guy. He's like,
He's
"Oh
very
yeah."
caring, very attentive.
Right.
Yeah,
And
he
it
seems like this sweet person.
almost to a fault. Like at one point like they're like riding the train and he's like, "Look, it's Wayne Enterprises." And Bruce is just like, "Oh, do you work there, Dad?" And he's like, "Oh, no. I work at the hospital."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Really? Wow.
Well,
You're gonna get shot soon." Like I just
Keaton, you know who you'd be in this movie? You would be Ra's al Ghul.
would I
You
don't
literally are saying exactly what Ra's al Ghul says in the movie.
yeah. It's just, yeah, you're right. But this Thomas Wayne, he was too good for this world. He was too good.
And
Gotham,
that's exactly what Ra's al Ghul was
yeah,
saying.
Gotham didn't deserve him. It didn't. But like it was just funny watching it because he really was. Like they really built up. Look how great of a guy Thomas Wayne is. And then of course they go to the opera that night. It's terrifying. Bruce is scared.
Because the poor kid sees bats up there, so he's
Right.
still kind of wigging out
Still
from falling
traumatized
into the
from
cave.
falling into a bat cave that was in their backyard, apparently. And so the Thomas Wayne sees Bruce afraid, and he's like, "Hey, let's get out of here." He doesn't even say, "Oh, Bruce is scared. We gotta go."
Mm-mm.
He saves Bruce to shame. He's like, "Ugh, it's hot and stuffy in here. Let's get some air. Let's go out." And of course, the back door that they leave out of is Crime Alley, and Joe Chill comes up. He happily gives Joe
Mm-hmm.
Chill the wallet. He's like, "Here, man, here's the wallet." And of course, there's always pearls.
Always pearls.
There's always
That's
pearls.
true.
I'm not gonna lie. I thought pearls were gonna be a much higher commodity as a child because of the Batman movies. Like I really thought like there are always pearls in there. Of course he goes for the pearls, and then Thomas jumps in, and that's when the
Yeah.
shooting happens. And the last words that Thomas says to Bruce as he's dying is like, "Don't be scared. Like don't be afraid."
So I'm glad you bring this up because I think that that showed the one flaw that they showed in his character in the whole movie.
Really?
Because he and his wife are bleeding, dying on the ground in front of
Right.
their child.
Right.
And he says, "It's okay.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid."
Right.
And he means very well.
That's true.
He means very well. He's trying to comfort his son. He's trying to make sure his son is okay until someone can help him. And yet, I wondered when I watched that, I was like, oh, because fear, avoiding fear, putting fear in other people, moving through fear, like fear is like a main theme in this movie.
Right.
And I wonder if that got stuck for him.
Oh. Huh. Yeah, because it was like it's basically his father's dying wish was for
Yeah.
him to not be afraid.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so at this point, this is the first time we meet James Gordon,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
He comes, he puts the coat around Bruce, and and then they just go, "Oh, by the way, we caught him. We caught Joe Chilton." So I was honestly shocked right then because it's like, oh, they immediately
That
caught him.
happened fast.
That
Yeah.
happened fast. It's like, wow, roll credits. This is good. Wonder what's going
Next
to happen in
movie.
the next movie. We've already seen Bats, so they've checked all the marks. I'm happy. But yeah, after that, they do a really good job in this movie of showing a lot more of the Bruce Wayne side, and they
Yeah.
also show a lot more of the police aspect of it and
Mm.
the court aspect of it. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it almost there were times in it when it felt like Law and Order Gotham, right? Because you saw the district attorney's office and the police commissioner was frustrated and they can't nail Falcone because, or as this movie says,
Ugh.
Falcone,
Ugh.
right? They put like a hard E on his name.
I don't understand that. We're just going to ignore that.
Right, and the psychologist of Gotham, he's
Corrupt.
he's corrupt. Like, of all
So
the people to
corrupt.
be corrupt, like,
He's a terrible human being. I
right.
mean, yeah, he's a
This,
terrible
yes,
human
okay, yeah,
being.
I have to give you the floor now because this has to strike personally with
Yeah,
you, right?
yeah. He like essentially leans into all the harmful stereotypes and takes advantage of them to
Yeah.
help the crime lords be able to do what they want.
Yes.
So he's essentially saying that all of these people who are violent, essentially they can't be seen to take ownership of their own actions within the law, which is complete and utter BS. And the nice thing in this is that it's kind of pointing out the fallacy in that violence does not equal mental health issues, and it actually takes quite a bit to be seen as not being seen. I'm trying to think of, because I don't know the right verbiage. There are very specific legal terms, and I apologize to any forensic folks out there. But essentially, it actually takes quite a bit to argue that someone is not responsible for their actions within the law. Because even if you're doing things related to mental health, you can
Hmm.
still very much be aware that you did something that was legally wrong. And
Right.
all of these things come into play in terms of all the things that roll out. So, yeah. And then on top of all that, he calls people crazies.
Yeah. Okay. Oh my God, I was
And
about
that
to touch on that.
yes.
Yes.
So, okay. I understand. I hear it's become, the word crazy is becoming a word that people use for like everything now.
Yes.
And it depends on the person, but especially if you're using it to describe a person,
Right.
but potentially using it at all is actually extremely offensive to a lot of people who have mental health conditions, because that's what's been used to label them, to say that they don't matter, to say that we don't care about you, to write someone off, and even worse things. So yeah, when you use the word crazies, I was just like, ah.
Yeah. In the world of mental health, the word crazy seems very lazy because it's almost like, oh, I'm just gonna put all of these different terms and all of these different issues that someone might be struggling from and put them under the cloud of crazy, right?
Crazy is a word that we use to essentially say that person's so different, I don't have to worry about understanding them.
Right.
We're
And
gonna put them in that box way over there.
I feel, and I also, like, I'm certainly not a professional at this, but I mean, I've even watched enough crime documentaries to know there's certainly a line between, oh, someone being violent and someone having a actual, like, severe mental health issue,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, there's a very big line, but yeah, he was just dancing
He
all
he was
over it.
taking advantage of all the things. A terrible, terrible human being. I just appreciate that they made it very obvious how terrible he was, because unfortunately things are not always so obvious. So I feel like I got the sense that, okay, the reason this didn't like super irk me, it was just like, oh, you're a terrible person in this movie, versus like me feeling an affront as a psychologist, was like, okay, they're making it very clear that he is not a good representation of a psychologist.
Yes.
Versus the like hundreds of representations where they show psychologists having sex with their clients. Those peeve me more.
Oh, yeah, they do that a lot.
They do that a lot,
Oh
and
my
that is
gosh.
very unethical.
They
So,
that does happen. I'm
yeah.
sitting there thinking, I'm like, oh my gosh,
So
that
those peeve me more because they make it seem like this normal thing, and and there's just a lot of power differentials and other things that really makes that not okay for it's very natural for someone to feel connected and even form feelings for a therapist given just how connected you can become, but it's up to the therapist to really draw that line and make sure it doesn't cross into this other territory because there's really
right,
yeah. So
right,
those bother me more than Scarecrow because Scarecrow is a very obviously bad
yeah.
psychologist.
It's interesting when you talked about the line. Like I remember when I was about to get married, I asked a friend. I said, would it be weird to invite my therapist to my wedding? And
Mm.
they were just like, yeah, yeah, don't, yeah, don't do that. You need to keep some worlds separated. And I
And
was like,
yeah, it's a
okay,
weird one because yeah, you're telling all these different things and it's also healthy, yes, to keep certain worlds separate and certain boundaries
right,
and all this stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a complicated thing. And it's also very natural to be like, "Hey, my therapist knows me really well. I'd love to be able to invite." Like all of us have stories of people who they've been like, "Oh, I wish you weren't my therapist so we could just grab a beer." And you know what? Sometimes we
oh,
think the same
that's
thing.
true. That's true. Now imagine if that person that understood you more than anyone in the world was Dr. Jonathan Crane,
Oh god.
right?
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
Like, and this, well, I'll say because we got to backtrack at some point to
Yes.
everything that Bruce does before all of this. But one thing that's interesting about this iteration of Jonathan Crane is he's not like a chemist that is
Mm-mm.
obsessed with fear. Like normally his backstory, I think Batman the Animated Series, he was a college professor that lost funding because his stuff was a little bit too out there and people were just like not messing with him. And then he just kind of does it anyway and gets infatuated with the concept of fear. This one is very, very different because the origin of the fear toxin is different in this.
Yeah.
And like you
It's
said,
much more like Ra's al Ghul's thing.
right. And he is like the district psychologist, or I guess the court psychologist. Like what?
So I think he was the psychologist for the defense
Oh,
because
okay.
he was helping the criminal the crime bosses and stuff versus what's her name, Rachel whatchamadoodle.
Rachel. Yeah.
She's got a last
Rachel
name.
Dawes.
Thank you. I was
Yes.
like, she's got a name.
Right.
So Rachel Dawes, she was like, we're going to bring in our own expert. So that would be the expert on the side of the DA. But yeah, you're right. There's less of this focus on fear from him. It's kind of more the circumstances all coming together, which is funny because he's the Scarecrow and turns into the Scarecrow, and he does seem a little bit of an afterthought of it, but is definitely this personification of all these things that Ra's al Ghul is really touting,
Right.
which is creating vengeance where you're more than a man, you're a symbol, and essentially strike fear so that you can have true vengeance and justice, but to
Yes.
a very terrifying degree.
Yeah, so we got to backtrack a little bit. I did skip a whole thing, didn't I? Because after Bruce's parents die, he is basically kind of growing up, and he grows up, and Joe Chill
Mm,
is in court. He's up for parole,
yep,
and Bruce straight up takes a 38,
yep.
and he has a snub nose 38 in his pocket because he says, "I'm gonna kill this guy. I'm just gonna shoot him." And Falcone.
Don't do that to me.
Well, I don't know what to do. Do I say the character's name the way they say it in the movie, or do I say it the correct pronunciation, right? But it was like Falcone sends his regards, and he gets like assassinated.
So it's not, just in case anyone's blurry on the details at this point. So it's not Bruce that does it. He sees someone else
Right.
kill
Bruce is about
Jojo.
to walk up and do it, and then yeah, someone beats him to it, and he and Rachel and him leave together, and Rachel's like, "You're a good man, Bruce," and he's like, "I'm not that good." And he pulls out the gun, and then Rachel slaps him in the face, not once but twice.
I thought that was a little
That's a lot,
lacking in compassion. Okay,
right?
granted, he was about to kill someone, and I would also probably
Not,
freak
but not
out.
just someone.
Yeah,
He wasn't just
this
about to kill someone. This
true.
was the person he saw in his nightmares.
Yeah.
This was the
I
person
also
he
don't
thought
think
about
slapping someone in the
every
face who's
single
holding a
day.
firearm is the smartest idea in the world, but
It's
whatever.
not very much not a smart thing to do. But she was just super angry with him.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like that because honestly, I'm with you. He needed a lot of compassion right there.
Yeah.
And she tells him, she's like, "Oh, in there is Carmine Falcone, and he owns all of Gotham. And as long as he's running the show, more Joe Chills will continue to spawn." And at that point, Bruce gets out of the car, he tosses the gun into the water, and then he goes in, talks to Carmine, and gosh, the actor, I think his name's Tom Wilkinson. He did such a good job as this
He did.
character because
He was excellent.
oh my gosh, the way that he's just has this attitude like, I'm the most powerful. I do exactly what I want. Look, I got a judge there. I got two councilmen there. I got someone on the union there. And look, now I have a gun. And I can shoot you right now in front of all these people, and nothing would happen. And I was like, wow, man, he sounds like the president. But anyway, uh, it was really interesting the way that they did that. So then Bruce basically leaves, and at that point, I think that's when it shifts because he realizes he's in a different world. Because
Yes.
Falcone tells him, he's like, "You're Bruce Wayne. You're the Prince of Gotham. You'd have to go 1,000 miles to find someone that didn't know your name. So don't come in here and talk about problems. Like, get out of my face. You're a billionaire." And a lot of the times, that's the attitude that people have with rich people. It's like, wow, you have $1 billion, zero problems, right? But in reality,
There are still problems no matter
there
how much money you
there
have.
are still
The
problems.
money helps you bounce back faster,
Right.
usually.
Right. For
But, yeah.
there's some things that money can't buy, and for everything else, there's MasterCard. Right. That's the saying. But yeah, so Bruce leaves. He gives his coat away to a homeless guy on the street, which I'm not gonna lie, not the best call because that could really get that homeless guy in a lot of trouble.
He was like, "Watch out, people might be looking for this coat." It's like, dude,
Yeah.
just buy him a different coat.
Right.
Like, give the guy a coat, but
Right.
not the coat everyone's looking for.
It was a very
Yeah.
it was very interesting symbolism they gave there. He's like, "Oh, it's cold, but I'm gonna toss my coat away," and
Yeah.
it was very. I understand why they did it, but I was like, man, that.
Yeah. I do agree that there is this nice trajectory that they show in that this trauma happens, and actually there were a few quotes that I felt like really showed the trajectory, kind of like you're talking about, where he's starting to realize what path he needs to take. And once again, the fear piece seems to really float through. And so first off, his dad says while he's dying, "Bruce, it's okay. Don't be afraid." Then Alfred's trying to help him through, like, I think the memorial had just happened or whatever. And he says, "It was my fault, Alfred, if I hadn't gotten scared."
Yes.
And then, so after all this Carmine Falcone, he realizes, okay, I need to step away. I need to understand the world better so that I can actually impact it. Because he's taking what Rachel Dawes says, he's taking what Carmine Falcone says, and putting it together and realizing I was trying to do a quick fix. And what do I need to do? And so then he ends up training with, okay, they call it League of Shadows here, but essentially the League of Assassins.
Yes.
I guess they didn't want to use the word assassins. I don't know.
Right.
And so in that training, someone says to him, "You learn to bury your guilt with anger. I will teach you how to face it." And so it's the fear, and then the guilt about the fear, and then the anger on top of all of that. And it's so interesting because fear keeps coming up, and everyone's saying you have to face the fear and confront the fear, and yet are using it in very different ways. Like, there's the very destructive, let's literally bring down the entire city. And then there's the how do we have compassion and build up the city to something new and better.
Right, and it's fun because when he's being trained by Ducard, Liam Neeson's character, his character, Ducard says something very interesting because I guess he's trying to push Bruce. He's trying to anger him
Yeah.
because he says like your parents' death was not your fault; it was your father's.
I told you you
Yeah,
were
yeah, and it's like
this character.
your anger does not change the fact that your father failed to act. So I'm not
Oh.
his character. I would not. I don't. I don't blame Thomas Wayne for that happening to him. I. Gosh, Gotham's just a bad place. Which honestly, this is the best Gotham I've ever seen. Most Gothams are even darker than this. This was
Yeah.
just Chicago. And so it wasn't so bad. It was Chicago with a very cool CGI train. And so yeah, this Gotham, like, the people in it were bad, but the look of it, it's just Chicago. Like, we saw the sun in this movie.
Yeah. Well,
That's
and it's
different.
well, and so it's interesting, right? So there's a sense of everybody seems to want vengeance and justice, but for some it seems like it's this like cruel and nasty, destructive thing, while for others it's this compassionate energy of rebirth. And even though
Right.
everyone seems to be, it's almost like everyone's saying to do the exact same thing, to aim for the exact same thing, and yet it's very different because a lot of people are talking about balance and making things just, and yet not everyone is incorporating compassion. I think actually at one point Bruce Wayne is like, there has to be compassion.
Well, right, and they definitely, yeah, they definitely touch on that because I have the quote here. I made sure to put it down because it was a really good quote. They make like Ducard and the League of Shadows really make it seem like having compassion makes you a weak person because he says
Yes.
to him, he says, "You're stronger than your father," and Bruce
Mm-hmm.
goes, "Oh, you didn't know my father," and he goes, "But I know the rage that drives you."
Mm-hmm.
Right, and so he almost makes it seem like there's just no hope for some people because he talks about his family and how he lost his wife, and he said, "I was forced to learn that there are those without decency that must be fought without hesitation and without pity. Your anger gives you great power, but if you let it, it will destroy you as it almost did me." And that's when it comes up, and Bruce is like, "What stopped it?" And Ducard says, "Vengeance."
And so here's the thing. Everything he's saying is what I would say as a therapist until that point, which is hopefully obvious.
Yes,
so
vengeance.
so anger and also fear and
Yes,
anything that we just let build and build and overtake us, whether we let it consume us or whether we try and shove it into a corner, if we don't let ourselves find a way through, these things really can degrade us and pull us apart. And what he's saying is very true. But ironically, when he says vengeance, he's just talking about maneuvering his anger into a very aggressive action.
hmm
And so all he's doing is creating, honestly, a lot of destruction that he himself was struggling with.
right.
He's almost like deflecting it onto other people.
Yes,
And so I was actually looking up some stuff because I was like, so what is vengeance versus justice versus all of that?
right.
And so some of it seems to be like, okay, for justice, there's more of the focus on restoring balance versus like revenge, and then maybe a little bit of vengeance. Like that's more like retaliation,
Right.
like eye for eye versus, okay, but at the end, everybody's going to lose an eye. So how do we just kind of create balance, reduce chaos?
hmm
But also at the end of the day, a lot of it. So one of the interesting things that they were mentioning was the fact that really having a drive for vengeance, you tend to have unreasonable, unrealistic expectations.
Yes. Yes,
And
but
so Ra's al Ghul and a lot of these folks, I mean, it makes sense to be angry and to want to do something, but that drive for vengeance where there's almost it seems like it's more of a punishment kind of thing versus a let's create a more balanced world.
yes.
And so a lot of that coming from the a very unreasonable expectation that could not be met. There were literally people improving the city, and he was like, "Good, I'm glad that we can kill them off so things can get bad again so we can destroy the city."
Right. And yeah, they very quickly you very quickly learn like, oh, these are going to be the villains of this movie because you even find out later on like, oh yeah, we're going to destroy Gotham. And it's not the first time. And they go back in history for all of these like Rome, Constantinople, like all of these places that they burned to the ground and I'm like, but everybody there wasn't bad.
Mhm.
Like there were a handful of people and even then like you can't go all Frank Castle on them, right? Like you can't do that. And Bruce learns that early on because right then they're like, "Hey, kill this man." And he's like, "No, I'm not.
Mm.
I'm not gonna kill this guy." And that sets up the whole thing because he ends up blowing up the whole place, and Ra's al Ghul seemingly dies, but he saves Ducard. And real
Well,
quick,
that's the difficulty here is it's let's process through your fear, let's get through your anger, but really it's let's put it on someone else rather than let's help you through. We're actually going to make someone else fearful and someone else have that focus that retaliation on them, which isn't great.
right? And so then that's when Bruce is like, "Okay, I'm gonna use all this stuff I learned, but I'm gonna help Gotham in a different way." And at that point,
Hmm.
like I said, that's when you find out all the like inner workings of things because they can't nail Falcone to anything because they don't have any proof. And
Right.
so the district attorney is struggling. Rachel is like the assistant DA. She's
Hmm.
struggling with that. Commissioner Gordon is working as like the only good
And
cop.
he's not commissioner yet.
Oh yeah, he's not commissioner. He's just a regular cop, right?
Yeah,
And of course, well, I think he might be is he a detective at that point?
I think so.
Maybe. Yeah, because he wasn't in uniform by then.
Right.
He wasn't in uniform by then, so he definitely was. All, he wasn't just like a beat cop like in before. But even his partner that was talking to him is like, "Hey, you make all the other guys nervous because you don't take money from Falcone like we do." And I'm like,
Hmm.
is the system that bad that he's like
I love that, right? You
alone in
feel,
being a good cop?
yeah, you should feel bad
Right,
because we know you're not corrupt.
right. You
You
should
should
feel
feel guilty.
right. Like, what is that? Like, you make a lot of the guys nervous because here you are doing your job the way you're supposed to.
But that's such a normal thing. I mean,
Right.
think about it.
But I'm like,
People
God,
tend not
Gotham
to like the
sucks.
person who's doing their job best.
Right. Like, whoa, that's the guy that he didn't cheat on his test. I don't like him. Right.
We're all going to get compared to this guy? Oh,
Right.
no, you're
Right.
ruining the curve.
Right. Right. But yeah, you end up learning all the system. I'm like, man, this movie. This is something that's interesting about the Batman Begins. It's not just Batman out here beating up criminals. Like it's all
True.
for a reason. Like it's like, hey, I'm gonna beat these guys up. I'm gonna leave them for the police because hey, they needed them at this crime scene. Or and
Hmm.
it's something throughout the Nolan trilogy. It's like, oh, you can't get that guy. Well, I can. So I'm gonna go to Hong Kong and I'm gonna beat up all his bad guys and then kidnap him and bring him back to Gotham for you. Like so,
Yeah.
it's
It's a
yeah.
really good point. I think you're right that he's one of the best depictions in terms of, yeah, seeing more of the whole picture.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, because the experiences we have really open our eyes to different things. And he had this really terrible thing happen to him as a kid.
Hmm.
And then he got blinders on where he saw everything through that and had these assumptions about what the world is like, and I understand the world because of what I went through. And then these other layers, what you were talking about with Rachel Dawes happens, what happened with Carmine Falcone. And then the blinders come off.
Yes.
And so, okay, the trauma's still there. I still went through that, but the blinders are off, and I'm now seeing everybody else's world. And then he goes out and really does something about it. And you're right, it's a really great portrayal of him becoming more than the billionaire.
Right.
Millionaire, billionaire, I guess nowadays billionaire.
Right.
And I think sometimes that's the hardest part about his character is people like, how relatable can Batman be? He's got all this money. But this is a really good depiction, which highlights how he steps out of that. And actually, I mean, in this movie, for a good chunk of it, he doesn't have like any money, so it's all Alfred's because he's legally dead.
Yeah, he's like, yeah,
that part
he was,
is so
yeah, because
hilarious.
he was gone for 7 years. Oh gosh, that was great. When he comes back and he's out there just like playing golf with the secretary. He's like, oh, it this company, they'll call back. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. And he just he walks around, and it's so funny because his Bruce Wayne persona is such a douche. Like you
Yep. This is the one that everybody thinks of, right? So they saw Robert Pattinson. They were like, this isn't right. This is wrong. And it's like, okay, well, this is one version, personally, my favorite style. But yeah, there's the one where it's, okay, I'm putting on the full cockiness, and he's not so much stuck within himself versus the Robert Pattinson version, who I think in some ways still very much has the blinders on.
Yeah, and it's whenever I see like this Bruce Wayne persona, it's almost like overacting. Like he's it's almost like he's really leaning in on the stereotype, right? Like he's really like, I'm gonna show up with two ladies. They're gonna jump in the swimming pool. If anyone has a problem with it, I'm gonna buy the hotel, and now we're gonna leave in the Lamborghini because I don't care. And I just jumped in the pool with them with this $1,000 suit, and I don't care.
Which is very smart, because that's the last guy you think is going to go and risk his life and do all of this stuff because he's this frivolous, obnoxious. He even fools his like lifelong childhood friend.
Right.
And to the point where at the end, she talks about what his mask is. So one of the things with Batman that often, people talk about is, so if you compare Superman and Batman, Superman is the mask and Clark Kent is the person, versus with Batman, it tends to be that Bruce Wayne is the mask and Batman is the person underneath. And they really, really accentuated that in this movie.
Yes, because even after he gets out of the pool, like Rachel's almost upset with him because at that point when he had gotten back, they hadn't seen each other at all. And so he's like, how are things? And she's like, it's bad out here basically. And he goes, well, he basically almost ridicules her a little bit, like, you can't change the world on your own. And she comes right back at him. It's like, I mean, I got to do something, especially when you're too busy swimming. And
that's
go ahead.
That's I'm just thinking like the amount of sacrifice that takes, where your public face. So imagine that, I mean, you and I are both in helping fields. You're a teacher, I'm a therapist. Okay, sure, we don't lean forward with that in everything that we do, but the helping part of us, people that really want to help and bring forth positive change, to completely change the face that shows to the public, to the people that come across you, to be essentially the opposite.
Right.
Where it's in such conflict with the values underneath. That's a hard thing to do. I mean, you have to be so committed. And really, she's right. I mean, the more you do that, the more Bruce Wayne has to be completely separate. You've got to completely detach yourself, because man, that would would hurt to put out such a different face to people than what's true inside.
And it kind of breaks him, because even at one point he's like, he even basically tells, he's like, Rachel, this isn't me. Like inside, I'm more. And I'm like, dude, chill. You got a job.
So
to
think
do
about
right
it.
now.
He's so committed to all of this stuff, but yes, it hurts so much for someone whose opinion that matters.
Yes.
to see him in this light that is so different from what he actually cares about, what he values, that he
Yes.
actually breaks character.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was good because it was the first time you see him almost like get shaken away from his main mission a little bit.
Yep.
But you bring up a really good point because so many times I feel like we see it all the time. Super nice people that secretly are not very good people. And
Mm.
this was the opposite. This guy seems like
Mm-hmm.
he's not a very good person,
Mm-hmm.
but actually it's the opposite. And so I thought
Yep.
that was really interesting. And he uses that quote to actually kind of tell her at the end of the movie
Mm-hmm.
that he's Batman. He's like, because he said it's not who you are underneath, but it's what you do that defines you. And she's like, oh my god, I said that to Bruce. You're Bruce. Like it's like the light bulb moment that you always enjoy
Mm-hmm.
whenever someone finds out that Bruce Wayne is Batman. And so the next big conflict comes because the district attorney gets killed, who I couldn't figure out
Of
if
course.
Rachel was dating because they definitely kissed on, well, she kissed him
So
on the cheek and like,
that was clearly a he was into her and she wasn't really into him type
got you,
situation.
got you.
Yeah, because he was like trying
Okay,
during
yeah,
part of it to
okay,
go
got you.
somewhere. Which also like, dude, you're her boss,
Yeah. And I'm not gonna
but
lie,
whatever.
I'm a little bit annoyed because in this one, she's the assistant district attorney. And then in the next movie, she's the assistant district attorney. And I'm like, no, she should be the district attorney. They're like, no, no, no. Harvey Dent's the district attorney. And she's in love with him. And I'm like, no, she knows this system and she knows this city better than anyone. She should be the district attorney. Like, it's whatever.
Yeah.
That's another subject, I guess. But
Well, welcome to my world, Keaton.
yes, it's
Fortunately, the world has changed quite a bit. It's actually interesting seeing superhero movies, even just. I mean, these aren't that long ago,
right.
obviously, but there's definitely been better representation and better um, diversification of people's storylines and
Yeah.
development of characters. And like, I think if it was done today, they might have found a way where maybe Harvey Dent wasn't DA, or I don't know, done that
Yeah,
somehow differently.
definitely. But one thing that these movies do is it shows that in a completely corrupt system, it's really difficult for the good people to do anything. And you see that with everything going on with the DA and Rachel. You see it with Gordon and all the dirty cops he's around. You even see it at Wayne Enterprises with Lucius Fox. He used to be on the board
Mm. Mm-hmm.
and they moved him to applied sciences to like get out of everyone's way and let them
Yeah.
do all the corrupt and whatever stuff that they want to do to make more money while he was doing his best to keep up the tradition and ideals that Thomas Wayne would
Yeah.
have wanted. And they were like, well, he's dead now, he's been dead, so you get out of here and go to applied sciences, you're not on our board anymore. And so it's bad because like, man, everyone that's trying to do good is not able to. And that's when of course the League of Shadows comes back and they're like, yeah, we're
Mm-hmm.
here. It's a very stereotypical Batman plot, like we're gonna vaporize Gotham's water supply. And I was like, oh my god, like that does
Yeah.
sound like a comic book villain thing to do, right? Like we're gonna vaporize all of Gotham's water supply, and it's full of fear gas that activates when it
I mean,
vaporizes.
it's one of the more terrible
Yeah,
options.
it
I would
is.
definitely and it's like literally locking down the city, which I guess is a island in the
Right.
or whatever. But we're shutting off the bridges and da 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 da. Literally everyone, even including like this poor little kid who seems to always be around when the worst stuff happens.
Yeah, and that kid would grow up to be Joffrey Lannister, like the actor. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yes, that's
Oh,
him. That's him.
you know, he didn't have a chance. It makes so much
Right.
sense now.
Joffrey grew up in Gotham and
Oh,
yeah.
oh no.
Yeah, I always laugh at it because yes, it's 100% him. And
Oh man.
also, that kid
He looks so
also,
innocent and not capable of such horrible things at that point.
well, he also, isn't he in the movie? Isn't he Jim Gordon's son? Isn't he James Gordon Jr.?
It's hard to know for sure. I'm
Isn't he?
not
I
really
thought that
sure.
he was, and if so, I'm like, man, it's really not going to end well for him because Jim Gordon Jr.
Yeah.
is a character all on his own that we can explore later.
Yeah, we're gonna have to hit on his character. Yeah, Gordon's son is oof.
He's a
He's a,
case.
he's a person.
He's a I think he's currently at one point he's with the Suicide Squad, and
Really?
yeah, at one point he ends up over there with them, which is pretty cool because he's like a criminal mastermind.
Mm.
But yeah, but not in the Nolan verse. Back to the Nolan verse. I told y'all I get distracted. But yeah, Batman finds a way to save the day. But even in this, one thing they do very interesting is they show that it's not just Batman saving the day. Like, it takes Batman,
That's true.
it takes the district attorney's office, it takes Commissioner Gordon, and all
Mm-hmm.
of them together as a team, of course, along with Alfred helping Batman. Like, all of them as a team are able to
Yeah.
get things done.
That's such a great point. Maybe that's why that movie hit us so well. We were
Hmm.
like, wow. Because, I mean, there have been a lot of great superhero movies since then and da da da. And you're so right. It takes the good people in all the different parts of the system working together
Yeah.
for it all to come to fruition. I really like that. That's a great point.
Yeah, because so many other times in Batman movies, especially like the Burton ones, Commissioner Gordon's basically like, man, only Batman can save us. Like,
Uh-huh.
he's so quick to turn on that signal. Like, oh wow, a bank's being robbed, y'all. Turn on the bat signal. I'm like, you have cops that can, like, like, it's like, oh man, that lady just, her purse was just stolen. Commissioner Gordon's like, you know what to do. Plug in the bat signal. Let's get
There's
this
a
going.
cat stuck in the tree.
Right. Like, man, if only Superman were here and we didn't have all these fire trucks. Like, but
Oh,
yeah,
man.
and so yeah, it's definitely the Nolan movies definitely set it up as more of a team effort.
Yeah,
It's more of a
I
team
agree.
effort, and yeah, because Batman certainly can't do it alone, and they focus on that too. They're like, he can't just beat people up. That's not
Mm-hmm.
enough. Like, okay, we need this, and we
Yep.
need this to put someone away. Otherwise, you gave him a black eye, and that's
Yep.
great, but that's it.
Now it's just a criminal with a black eye. Yeah.
Right, right.
So I have one more thing about this movie that I definitely wanted to make sure to touch on because I do some presentations and education training stuff for part of my job. And I actually I bring up Batman Begins sometimes
Hmm.
because of like my favorite quote. So it's when Bruce falls into the Batcave and he's all scared and everything, and his dad goes down and grabs him and
Yes.
takes him in. I think he's like got a broken arm or something. And Thomas says this, and then later Alfred says it to Bruce when he's in a really down and out place. And what he says is, "Why do we fall, Bruce? So we can learn to pick ourselves up."
That is it's such a great line.
So, yeah, it's such a great line. And here's why I love it. So Dr. Patricia Deegan, who has done a lot in terms of disability and mental health disability, coined the term dignity of risk.
Okay.
And so I love that quote because it highlights why every single person needs the freedom and ability to fail.
Oh wow.
Yes. So dignity of risk, one of the things that can happen if someone is really struggling is we don't want them to struggle.
Right.
We care. But what we can inadvertently do is if a person has already really struggled in their lives, we might try and use kid gloves, so to speak, or try and protect people from things,
Hmm.
or we might have a sense that, oh, this person is capable of doing this and not capable of doing that.
Hmm.
And we can inadvertently prevent a person from the trial and error that we have to succeed and to thrive. And so dignity of risk is essentially what Thomas Wayne is saying, is we're not trying, and it all hits on this whole fear theme that goes through this whole movie, right? It's not that we need to avoid things that make us afraid, or we need to avoid things where we might fall. It's the fall is there for a reason. We leap, we run, we try, we fall, and in the fall we learn to pick ourselves back up.
Right.
And that's where we thrive.
That's really good. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
wow. That and yet dignity of risk.
Dignity of risk.
Wow. I really like that.
Yeah.
I've never heard
Yeah.
of that before. And yeah, God, I love
It's one of
this.
my absolute favorite phrases, because, I mean, and we can even ourselves become afraid of failure and afraid of falling.
Yeah.
Because it hurts and it sucks and it's embarrassing and all sorts of things happen. And I mean, there are so many different scientists and people and where, you know, they talk about the failures and how it leads to some sort of realization, or you've got to try something to figure out if it's going to work or not. And then you learn from that and move on from there. But yeah, dignity of risk.
Oh my gosh. I really, really like that. That's something I would like to dig into and focus on. I love this podcast.
Yes. Don't you worry. On our website, I'll put it on the BAT database for you.
Sweet.
So dignity of risk, so you can read some more about it.
Sweet. So yeah, I know we're hitting the point where we're about to do some mindfulness exercises, but before that, I do want to mention that Scarecrow gets tased in the face by Rachel Dawes in this movie, and I really did not want to go the full episode without definitely making mention of the fact that he's riding a horse through the streets of Gotham, and he's wearing his mask, and he gets shot in the face with a taser, and that was the end of his character arc in this movie. Also, Batman definitely kind of sort of killed someone at the end of this. Like, I won't kill you, but I don't
not gonna
have to
save
save
you.
you. And it's like,
That's gray.
It's great. Yeah. Definitely a hard shade of gray there. Like, yeah.
Both excellent points,
Yes.
and both are exactly why I love you.
Yes. See, this is what Amelia brings to the table, something really deep and meaningful. And I have written on a postcard, remember to talk about Scarecrow getting tased in the face. Those are the notes that I bring to this podcast.
Love it. Love every minute of it. So good. Oh, okay. Now that we've had a nice laugh, I love it. Okay. So my mindful nerd moment for you today is, I think it's a little different than any of the other ones we've done. And so you're going to have to potentially work a little bit harder with this one. So what we're going to do is guided imagery of a Batcave. So what I wanted to take the theme of this movie, because I was like, what am I going to do? And I came up with a few ideas, and I liked the idea of bats in a cave because it's not innately relaxing, probably for most people.
Right.
No judgment if it is relaxing for you. But bats flying past you, squeaking and squawking in a cave, rushing past you. Usually our reaction is to scrunch away or to bat them away or to have some sort of reaction like, ah. And so sometimes what can be nice with mindfulness is trying to practice something that's not going to be innately relaxing, because it's really honing the skill. It's not all about in that very moment feeling relaxed, but finding a way to find a sense of relaxation in any moment, or find relaxation. Maybe that's not the best phrase, but more an acknowledgement and finding a way to not try and force every issue and everything. Just being able to take in the fact that we can't control it all, and in accepting the lack of control, we can actually almost find like almost a little bit of zen or something in these moments, even though it's not a comfortable situation for us. So essentially, finding a way to be okay with the discomfort.
Gotcha.
So that's what we're aiming for. So what we're going to do is we're going to envision the Batcave and just trying to use that same mindfulness we've been using
Hmm.
while imagining the bats flying by.
Okay.
All right. So, as per usual, find a comfortable position where you can relax and breathe easy. But also, it helps to be sitting at least somewhat straight or lying straight, just in terms of the comfort and position. And first, as per usual, if you're comfortable, closing your eyes can be helpful for focusing, or just relaxing your eyes so you're not looking anywhere in particular. And let's just start by noticing your breath. Focus on how it fills your belly and abdomen when you inhale, and notice how it empties when you exhale. And as you breathe, just notice if there's any tension or discomfort in your body. And imagine releasing that tension, that discomfort, as you exhale your breaths. And now let's allow our minds to go to the coolness of an underground cave. Just allow this to happen. The place may be familiar or it may be somewhere brand new. But just allow your mind to float there and to become aware of the cave and how it feels, and imagining how it would look and sound. Next, take a few moments to notice the sound of bats flapping and squeaking in the background. Notice these sounds coming closer, and you're able to see, hear, and feel bats coming toward you and flying past. Feel the air shift with the beating of their wings. Hear the high-pitched call as it goes by your ear, and notice as they start to echo away. And just practice noticing bats periodically flying by you without attempting to change the experience, and without attempting to label this experience as something you like or that you don't like. Do not imagine moving away. Don't attempt to shift the bats in any direction or another. Just allow them to be a part of the place you are in. They're neither good nor bad. They just are. We're going to come back from the exercise soon, so just allow one more lone bat to start flying toward you. A few high-pitched calls as it moves by. You notice and feel the flapping of the wings, and once again, just allowing it to be in this space. Not forcing it or changing it, not speeding it along or slowing it down, just allowing it to be. And as that bat flies away, begin to pay attention to your breath again. Notice the change in temperature as you shift from your imagination in the cave back to where you are. And take one last deep breath in and out before you come back to the room. So how was that?
That was different.
Mm-hmm.
That was very different because it's almost like learning to deal with something that would normally bother you
Yes.
a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like putting your like the I normally when you think of mindfulness, it's putting yourself in the most peaceful possible
Uh-huh.
situation, but in this it was putting yourself in a somewhat terrifying environment
Mm.
and being peaceful with it,
Yes.
which I guess in a way would be good because it's like even if you're in a stressful environment and need mindfulness, you're essentially kind of putting yourself in an even more stressful environment to kind of
Mm. Ding,
yeah,
ding, 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 ding. Yep.
nice.
We can create more pain and suffering for ourselves by trying to force something to be something that it's not.
Right.
And it can be weird where this is an exercise where we say, okay, I'm going to choose to make myself feel uncomfortable.
Right. Right.
And it's for that purpose. Like you're saying, we will never be able to constantly be in comfortable situations. And so this is a way of practicing, how do I allow an uncomfortable place, space, experience to be uncomfortable? And don't get me wrong, certain uncomfortable things need to be changed or we need to exit that scenario. But as long as there's not rabies and blah, 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 blah. And imagine you're Bruce falling to the bottom of the cave. You can't make the bat stop.
Right.
And if you try to make the bat stop, you're just adding layers of stress and tension to yourself by trying to control the uncontrollable.
Right.
So yeah, absolutely. That's the whole point of this kind of exercise.
I feel like this is something that would be really, really good for the average Gothamite.
Ah, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, could be worse. Could be in the water with Killer Croc.
Your favorite reference.
I always got to mention him. 9-foot tall alligator man. Crocodile man. Just living in the sewers of Gotham. No big deal. It's fine.
We're all fine.
Thanks for nerding out with us.
I'm clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown. You can find me at Crafting the Mind on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
And I'm comic enthusiast and nerd aficionado Keaton Hopkins. You can find me and my friends' movie reviews and reaction videos at teamjvs.com or on YouTube at teamjvs. For more information on this and other topics, check out our website at bat-therapy.com. To keep current on episodes and other updates, subscribe to our Bat Therapy YouTube channel or follow us on social media. We'll see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.